Now I already know what you're thinking, but what can I say? No matter how big or small the details, when the New World info starts dropping, there's no way we can't answer the call. What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to yet another day in Aeternum. I know we've already went over a hell of a lot of detail for this game, but to my surprise, we're still getting little info drops of new stuff here and there. This one specifically comes from a recently posted article by main-mmo.de, which for those of you who don't know, they are also the article site that went over the very first details of the Horde mode and the streamer armies. It looks like they have in fact been blessed with some details about the PvE system and saw fit to bestow it upon us. Now of course, player versus environment has been a big cause of concern after the player versus player changes of New World, most notably because people feel like the game might not have enough player versus environment content to supplement the loss of open world PvP. And even though me personally, I wouldn't expect this game to have as much PvE content as one that's been out for 6 to 10 years right off the bat, but it's important that we pay attention to these topics so that everybody knows what we're getting into. So last week in the Dark Side of Aeternum video, we briefly touched on how a recent article from GameStar did include some information that we mostly knew about regarding the open world PvE content. Instead of seeing instance dungeons and raids like we would see in a traditional MMO, instead we will see different points of interest around the world that act as open world dungeons. And some of them do actually have functions like dungeons, where the deeper we go into them, the more challenge we will face as we fight through the stronger mobs to get to the best loot possible. Along with this, as we know, we will also encounter field or world bosses in the open world, but we haven't had much info on this specific aspect yet. They do talk about some undiscovered environment content that we'll come across in New World in this one. They say that aside from regular points of interest that we'll come across in the world, like abandoned pirate ships of the lost, we'll also see actual open world areas that function like big dungeons. They'll have trash mobs that come in groups and pairs that we'll have to work through, which get harder and harder the further we get. And in these big dungeons, we'll finally come across the name bosses that we'll need entire groups to take on, which makes me hope that we'll see some big creatures of corruption or even the Angry Earth faction like this unknown beast. There's only a few creatures that we've seen so far that seem like they could be special bosses in the game, but I would love seeing us being given the chance to take them on at certain points of the island, especially this Diablo looking creature. But after this, they jump into a really important topic that wasn't included in the other articles in detail up until this point. So just to give a baseline to this, a couple weeks ago when we had our discussion regarding player versus player content while there were still rumors about the opt-in system, we did talk about some suggestions to supplement the change if it were to happen. One of the things I brought up is something I would love to see, like dimensional rifts that act as dynamic events out in the open world. You travel to them manually, and once they start, you have to fight against other players and maybe even other creatures to earn your reward. This is not the mechanic that was revealed today, but it looks like there will be something similar to it in the open world, which means that it could open the door to other mechanics that would also follow the same rules. And it looks like this specific mechanic is called arenas. And no, it's not like the PvP type of arena that we could jump into whenever we wanted, although that does sound pretty cool too. It's actually more like a survival gladiator arena that we can team up with a group of 5 with and then take on a series of elite monsters. It doesn't say if it comes in waves or if it's just one specific boss fight, but to enter this instance we need a key of some sorts. This key allows our groups to enter the arena, but once we do, not only can we not go outside the arena, but players on the outside won't be able to watch what's going on inside. Also, one thing to note is that if we die while doing the arena, we immediately lose the key that we used to get into it. The developers state that these monsters we're facing in the arena will be so difficult that they'd completely dunk on us if we took them on alone. And if we're able to succeed in these arena fights, we'll receive a lot of rewards from it. They didn't specify how we would get these keys, but I would imagine it would be tied down to grinding mobs in the open world or getting loot in other ways. But even though this sounds really cool, and also like a great way to make sure there's enough content in the game for PvE, the best thing about it is not that we're able to do it, but that Amazon Game Studios has the capability to design it. Just like the Dimensional Rift idea that we spoke about before, seeing dynamic events like this arena would greatly expand what we're able to do in the world, and also what we can suggest for the future. With this kind of system, we could have specific dynamic events tied to PvP, like you would see in a PvP-based world quest like a game from World of Warcraft. Or perhaps we can see an instance that features field bosses that we'd have to take on with like 20 people or more, or have to go into a big room to fight a boss like Kazarka. Although instead of it being inside the instance, it would be much better to see the bosses in the open world. Or a chain of dynamic events that leads up to a big one that we might need about 100 players or more to take on. Something like that would be great to see, or even one of my personal favorites, Hellgates like you would see in Albion. But honestly, more than anything, I'm just curious to see what they're planning at this point. We probably won't see a long list of content that can satisfy us for a full year's time, especially right off the bat, but the list is definitely growing. And I know that our MMO community is always ravenous for a AAA title, or even at the very least, a decent experience. So like we said before, even if the game doesn't suit your needs right at the beta start or launch, don't forget to keep looking back. Even games like ESO or Guild Wars 2 didn't start out in the best of states, or even Black Desert Online. Despite how much beef that game and myself might have, I can't deny that with a little bit of time, it's certainly come a long way. And that goes for all titles. We've got so much that's coming in the next years, and all that I hope is that there will be enough out there for everyone to find their new homes in the genre. Let's keep our fingers crossed on that one. But back to New World, it's great to see that we're still learning about new content we'll be coming across while exploring the island. At this point, for the playerverse environment aspect, we know about mechanics like the Horde, the points of interest, these open world dungeons and raids, the arenas, the corrupted breaches, of course the grinding areas and quests we'll have access to, and the town projects plus faction missions. Alongside all the life skills and housing stuff we'll have, that's shaping up to be a very decent list of stuff we'll be able to do on that side of the game. But all in all, that's everything we have to go over today. In other quick news, Amazon Game Studios has filled their position for the release manager role. Their duties include all things related to the releases for New World. So hopefully that means we'll get ourselves a smooth launch phase during the month of May, or as smooth as a launch could be for an MMO, that is. But on that note, folks, I am really curious to see your thoughts on this. Now that we have a better understanding of what to expect in the game, do you think we'll have enough Playerverse environment content to last long enough for their content updates to start rolling through? Or is there more that you would like to see on the Playerverse environment side still? Let us all know in the comments below. Also, be sure to stay tuned for their next upcoming developer blog that outlines the corrupted breaches of New World. That one should open up a further discussion for us on that side of the game and what it will offer, along with the Territory War blog as well. And as always, thank you very much for taking the time out to check out this video, and I hope you all have a wonderful night or day. And farewell.